Hello, friend. You're welcome to this discussion on the subject shadows of love. Many of us, while growing up, had this kind of challenge trying to understand what our shadow looks like. And that is why sometimes you see children trying to step on their shadows or try to outrun their shadows. Some of us did it. Maybe you did it. All right. And of course, shadow is often present once there is a concrete or tangible subject or object with rays of light on that object. So in this context, we are looking at shadows of love. If love is an object, then there must be shadows of this true object. And that is what we want to review in the next few minutes. So let's start with the first question. What is shadow? Shadow is basically lifeless, intangible, exclusive, and dark replica of the substance or real objects. That object may be living or non-living objects. It is basically lifeless imitation of the real objects, sometimes in extended form, sometimes in reduced form, depending on the time of the day or depending on the particular intensity of the ray of light on the object. So like concrete or tangible objects, love has many shadows. And these shadows are things I will review with us, I will discuss with us. The shadows of love look very much like love. And some people have sincerely but erroneously pursued this shadow only to get frustrated. The consequences of pursuing shadows of love can be very, very devastating. I've been in counseling and I've seen young people who felt very, very devastated because of the consequences of this kind of shadow of love. Especially some young people who are sincere love seekers. Some of them become victims of zealously, with strength, with investment, pursuing the shadow of love, thinking they have seen the substance called love. And often it leads to frustration. Sometimes it ends in scandal. Sometimes you see disgrace, regret coming up. For some people, they enter into suffering mental health challenge. And even some people end up ending their life prematurely just because of they mistakenly started pursuing shadows of love. So my aim in this discussion is to help you understand the shadows of love. We'll look at the features so that you will not get into falling victim of this shadow of love. Okay, if you understand the original, for those who work in the banking sector or where currencies are very well used, if you want to teach people how to make sure they dictate fake currency, the best is to teach them the original. If they know the original, they can easily dictate the fake one. So we'll just see what this shadow looks like. I will discuss about 6 of them. And then we try to conclude with what love is all about. So that when you are pursuing love or when you are in love, you know. If you are not in love, you get to know. Okay? So the first one I want to look at is what is called inordinate affection. Inordinate affection is actually a very powerful emotional feeling towards someone who doesn't belong to you. It may be someone's spouse, someone's husband, someone's wife. You begin to fall in love with that person, or for the person. It may be somebody who is engaged, who is in serious relationship with someone else, and you are falling in love with that individual. It is inordinate because inordinate actually means something that is not proper, something that is misplaced, something that is wrong. So inordinate affection is not the same thing as lust too, because at least lust, the main motive of lust is sexual affection, sex. But inordinate affection, at least at the beginning, may have nothing to do with sexual relationship. Okay, it comes like a lot of eye contact. It comes like giving attention, giving extra care, admiration. And if left unchecked, it can actually graduate into lust and other forms of immoral behaviors. So this is quite common among married people. It is common among people who are engaged, especially when you feel that your partner lacks that attractive qualities that you admire in the object that has become the object of your inordinate affection. Okay? When you feel, especially for those who lack real love from their partners, sometimes you see them falling victims of pursuing this shadow called inordinate affection, because they begin to see it like a relief mechanism, a substitute for what they are lacking. Victims of this kind of shadow of love become very smart in hypocritical behavior. Secrecy becomes their key target. They become good candidates for suspicion. Okay? On the contrary, love is confident. Love is bold. Love is free. Love is not ashamed to be discovered. But because this is not proper, it's always ashamed to be discovered, even though it's pretending to be love. Okay? The affection in true love is proper and is acceptable. But inordinate affection as a shadow is not acceptable. And so the person who has fallen victim tries to hide it as much as possible. The second shadow I want to look at is infatuation. Now, in those early days when GSM mobile phone wasn't so common in Nigeria, people go to phone booths to make calls. I was in one of the phone booths either to make call or buy airtime. And then a young man was telling the person who was selling to us a story. He said, look at what happened recently. I saw one beautiful girl, and I just admired the girl. I don't have any feeling for her, but I just decided to make a move. So I walked quickly behind her and called her attention. Hello, babe. Can I have a time with you? And surprisingly, the girl started flowing. And he said he had a good time with this girl. And sincerely, beyond that arrangement, nothing else. That the girl will be surprised to see him tomorrow, and there's no affection, there's no attraction. He just felt like experimenting love. Okay, so infatuation is actually a kind of falling in love foolishly. Excuse me. Falling in love foolishly. Being in love without any definite goal. Let me to drink this water. All right? Water is life. Good, thank you. Just being in love for no just reason. You are just doing an experiment with someone's life. It's an attempt to practice love when you don't have true love. Okay? Some people fall in love not, with someone, not necessarily because they love the person, but because the person looks like a good sample for their love experiment, like that guy did experiment with the lady. Infatuation is short span. It is an emotional attachment that evaporates once there is any small resistance. Okay? It does not have any long-term goal. On the contrary, love never fails. Love is goal-driven. Infatuation has no goal or purpose. It just comes like a vapor. And before you know what is happening, it's no longer there. And the victim who had pursued it sincerely will feel hurt. But that's what a lot of young persons have suffered. Love has purpose and can endure oppositions. It can endure attacks. Remember the story of David and Jonathan. The father of Jonathan wasn't happy the way Jonathan loved David, and David also loved him. He tried to do everything, but he couldn't stop that. That is love. The third shadow I want to share with you is the shadow called lust. With reference to the Bible story of David's son, Ammon. Ammon fell in love with his half-sister, which was a very bad one. And he had this bad friend that came to advise him, Jonadab. Jonadab advised him on how to trick the whole situation, deceive his father, deceive everybody, until he was able to rape his half-sister. Because he felt he was in love. so loved that he became sick. And that's what happens to some people. And they think it's real love, whereas it's shadow. Okay? Tema tried to stop him, tried to convince him to do otherwise. But the young man didn't agree. He was just determined to make sure he satisfied his lustful desire. And then when that happened, the Bible recorded that Ammon quickly, just suddenly, that thing that looks like love got disappeared. And he now hated this young lady with so much hatred, more than the love he claimed to have had for her at the beginning. He became violent. He pushed her away out of the house, locked the door, disgraced her. And this was the same person that claimed to have loved her to the point of becoming sick. And that is what a lot of young persons are suffering today. The major aim of lust is, that lust, that powerful emotional attachment. The major aim is selfish sexual satisfaction. In most cases, once this is achieved, the girl loses her values. In the eye of that man, she becomes as cheap as nobody. And that is why you see some of them trying to do everything to recover their image, to recover, that affection, but it's no longer there. Even on the side of the man, the Bible also says that when a man has exposed himself to sexual immorality, he becomes as cheap as loaf of bread. Okay, so once that happens, the person feels cheated, the person feels deceived, feels unloved, feels unappreciated. There is this social insecurity the person will begin to suffer once someone has been affected or become victim of such kind of shadow of love. Okay, this often affects the ladies more, especially their attitude towards marriage. It affects them negatively. If she does not quickly recover from the psychological challenge that follows such treatment, it will seriously, it may make her lose her values for life. And that's why you see some people begin to live immoral lifestyle as though nothing is there. The first time it happened, they felt bad, they felt deceived, they felt cheated. But if she doesn't quickly recover, it becomes a lifestyle. And that's what a lot of young persons are suffering today. If that is your situation, please, I want to encourage you. You can recover from that challenge. Anybody who had treated you that way and dumped you does not deserve you. And if you know the person doesn't deserve you, you won't want to begin to live a fake life just because of that experience. Okay? Because that same man will hardly trust her once that has happened. He sees her as a potential prey to every other man, start suspecting her for anything. Experience has shown that most men respect and admire young ladies who play hard to get when it comes to premarital or extramarital sexual affair. Men, experience has shown that they respect such young ladies. Somebody refused to give it to you, they respect them. But once you give it, you lose your value. Okay? So in marriage, this kind of people, who get into it, they begin to feel everybody is a suspect around them. And once a lady has been treated that way, quarrels, suspicion, maltreatment, fighting, court cases, that's if a marriage is built based on this kind of lusts. Okay, someone came because of lust, you now decide to drive it that way. In most cases, you see such marriages, there's serious suspicion, there's quarrel, there's maltreatment, there's fighting, and sometimes they find it difficult putting their finger on what is causing the trouble. Okay, the lady has gone to work for one reason or the other, somebody dropped her off, the guy starts suspecting. Every high becomes a problem because you gave it cheap to him when he asked for it before the time. All right, I used to illustrate with this story that if that guy is actually meant for you and he comes for sex and you say no, if it's meant for you, he will come back with flour apologizing. If it's not meant for you, he will go. And for goodness sake, let him go. He doesn't deserve you. If you give it to him, do you know how many persons he has sampled that way before? And then he will take yours, move to another young lady. Such men should be called to order. Hold your value. All right? So, unlike lust, love is stronger than biological or selfish interest, uncontrolled emotion. Lust is one of the quickest way of losing your self-respect, your self-worth. It is deceptive. It is destructive. It is not love. So the fourth shadow I want to quickly review is the one that a lot of people easily mistake to be love, and that is admiration. Somebody admires you. You know, there was this story of a young man who was admiring a beautiful girl, you know, only to be disappointed when he discovered that she was actually, you know, parading based on makeup. She was beautiful based on makeup. You know, they attended a party in the night, and so this guy was talking with his friend, and suddenly one beautiful lady walked into the arena. He was like, wow, this is beauty personified. He went for her, and then they started talking. So they exchanged address. The following day, the young man traced her to the house. Getting to the house, he was surprised. He saw a different face and said he needed to clear his curiosity. He said, please, I'm looking for so and so person. And the lady smiled and said, I'm the one. That guy was shocked. Shocked to his marrow. He couldn't believe that was exactly the same thing. So he was admiring this lady based on her makeup, but he wasn't in love with the real person. And that is what happens to admiration. Okay? The love that that you thought you have will suddenly disappear. That guy who thought he was in love, that love disappeared. He walked away from that relationship. Okay, so admiration is an emotional feeling of attachment to a particular aspect of an individual's life or an object or thing. That's admiration. I can admire you because you are intelligent. Someone can admire you because you are tall, but that does not mean the person loves you. Someone can admire you because of the way you speak, your boldness. Maybe because you are intelligent. Maybe because you are social, and the person admires you. But that does not define true love. Beauty is attractive, no doubt. But that beauty can be dented by anything. And of course, if you suddenly begin to discover another aspect or even the past of that individual, that is when that love will be tested. You admire somebody, you go for the person, and then you begin to get information you don't know about the person before. That will be a big test for that love to see whether it will stand the test of time. So love built on admiration can only last as long as that object or that aspect that is being admired exists. Once that aspect is no longer there, then that love disappears. And that is why it's not true love. It's based basically or largely based on what the person sees. On the contrary, true love is deeper and stronger. You know, is deeper and stronger than what the human eyes can see. Admiration, you know, admiration alone is not true love. It is important, please don't misunderstand me, but it's not true love on its own. You know, you are truly loved, or you are, if you are truly loved, or, you know, that's the question you need to ask yourself. The person you are talking to, or the person talking to you, telling you about love, you ask yourself, does this person truly love you, or the person is just admiring you? That's the question you need to answer. If you're only an object of admiration, attention will shift as soon as some other person that can be admired comes on board. And that will be the end of your story in that relationship. The fifth one, I told you there are 6 of them. The fifth one is what I call respect. Respect is very, very important in any relationship. You know, but we have had cases, you know, where someone, a man of impeccable character, a man that is respected in the society because of his character, because he carries himself well, he respects himself and respects every other person. You know, that kind of person everybody admires and respects. May approach a lady for marriage, And the lady may decide to marry the guy just because he's respected in the society or among their peers. Oh, they have been discussing, anybody this guy marries is lucky. And suddenly he comes for you. And then you think you are lucky because he's respected. Without knowing that, or discovering, or asking yourself, is truly you love that person? If your love is just based on that respect, you will discover that at the end of the day, you will not be yourself. You know, there was a case like that, and suddenly, by the time this lady got married, it discovered that this guy, though respected, doesn't have time for her. He just wanted to marry. He just wanted to keep a wife in the house. And so this young lady began to feel very lonely, feeling rejected, feeling husbandless. Yet she married someone well respected. Outside, people will be envying her, thinking that she's enjoying because her husband is a respected human being. But within the house, the young lady is suffering loneliness, feeling like she's already a widow while the husband is alive. Just because that love was just built based on the respect she had for the man. It can also happen the other way. Somebody is approaching you just because he respects you. You are playing hard to get, and that respect attracted him to you. If that alone is the basis on which he's coming, it is not the substance, it's shadow. You know, often we feel honored to identify with such kind of personality in the society, someone that is respected. If such respected person approaches the person, you know, the lady, such respected person approaches a lady, and the lady, for one reason or the other, is not comfortable, it is called that it's an uphill task to say no. Because if she says no, even the parents, even the family, the friends will be surprised at her. You know, he may be respected, but he's not the kind of person that can fit into your life. You should be bold enough to say no to such proposal. But where you lack that kind of courage and boldness and honesty to say no, you may plunge yourself into a regrettable marriage. Okay, and that is what a lot of people have suffered and are still suffering it. So don't get me wrong, please. Respect, especially mutual respect, is very, very good. It's an integral part of love. You can hardly separate it from love. But respect alone does not give room for freedom. It does not give room for real, for real love and fun in marriage. Such sincere freedom and fun can only be expressed in the domain of true love. Let's take the final one. Is that okay? All right. And that reminds me, you know, a lady once told her husband something. It's a case I managed somewhere in a university. And this young man was working in the university. So he had a challenge. And we were gisting. He told me about the case. I followed up. And then I got to discover that this lady told the guy, unfortunately, that marriage has ended. Very unfortunate. And I don't wish that to anybody I know. A little one that God said that divorce he hates. Okay? Now, you know, this young lady told the young man, when they started having crisis, the family of the guy came into the picture, her own family came into the picture. So one day they were exchanging, you know, words like that. And the lady told him, to his shock, he said, sincerely, let me tell you, I never loved you. You need to hear this so that you mellow down, you calm down, stop this fight. I never loved you. You proposed to me, your parents said they don't want me. At that moment, I wanted to walk away, because I didn't see the attraction anymore. But because of the way your parents were driving it, I decided to prove a point by marrying you. So I only proved a point by getting married to you. You were respected. People felt that anybody you marry is privileged. And so when they started doing that kind of thing for me, I didn't fancy it. So I wanted to walk away. But the way they were driving it, I decided to prove a point. And I think I've proved that point. And as long as she has proved the point, she walked away from that marriage. You know, and that is what some people have been suffering. That someone respects you does not always mean that the person truly loves you. You need to be sure what is happening. If she's not always bold to speak freely to you in a relationship, you are talking with her, she's always shy, she's not always bold to talk to you. Even when you are making mistakes, she doesn't find the courage to correct you. She's just respecting you. The true love is not there. If she loves you and you are making mistakes, she will tell you. And so you need to find out what is happening around you. That's not a sign that somebody is in true love. When you discover that he cannot boldly talk to you, the person is feeling like he's shy. If, on the other hand, if he's always talking more about your respect for him, your respect for in the society, more than he talks about you as a person. No, get me right. This guy is coming for you, and then he talks more about your respect, your achievement, your respect, more than he talks about you as a person. That may not be a sign for true love. Respect is not love. That's the point I'm trying to make. It is only an integral part of love. So don't mistake respect for love. The last point I want to make, and then I'll begin to draw, I'll begin to draw conclusion. Again, I say water is life. Thank you for paying attention, right? Okay, now, the last point I want to share with you is issue of compatibility. Compatibility. Many people mistake compatibility to mean the same thing as love. We have had cases of married couples who before their marriage were very, very compatible, socially compatible, culturally compatible, spiritually compatible, call it religion, physically compatible, yet their marriage didn't last. Because they built their marriage on the basis of compatibility, not true love. We have also had cases, please don't misunderstand me, compatibility is very, very important. I encourage people who are going into relationship to check compatibility issue. All right? We may be attending the same church, but we may not be compatible in terms of faith. What you like, what you believe in, may not be the same thing I like and I believe in. Okay? So, on the other hand, we have also had or seen couples who, by human judgment, are not compatible. And speaking humanly, they shouldn't have anything to do together in marriage. Yet, their strong love for each other has made their marriage become admirable. I've had cases like that. Okay? So some people, unfortunately, discover very late that, thank you. Discover very late that they are compatible, and they mistook it for love. Love itself, compatibility can be developed. If we are not compatible and we discuss and we negotiate, we can become compatible. But love itself is a stronger force. You cannot learn it. You cannot begin to. It's a stronger force. It's beyond what the human eyes or brain can perceive. Compatibility is good and can seriously help to reduce areas of crisis in marriage. It can help to reduce clashes of interests, but it has its own limitation. That's the point I'm making. So there is more to love than just compatibility. You can train yourself to become compatible. That's the point I made earlier. But you can hardly force love into existence. Love is supernatural. Love is that supernatural force that flows naturally once it identifies its cause. Once it identifies its direction, it flows naturally. All right? And that's the 6th point. Can I make one more point? And that point is important to me. The shadow that I call pity. There is another shadow called pity. One of the worst things you can do is to enter into a marriage on the basis of pity instead of love. I can repeat it again. One of the worst mistakes you can make is to enter into a marriage relationship based on pity instead of love. Someone can positively consider a potential spouse, not necessarily because he or she is in love, but probably because of the pity or sympathy for the suffering or the rough time the person has passed through. We have cases like that. For instance, you may see a lady, and this lady has found out that this guy I'm in relationship with is not the will of God for my life. I don't feel free here. I don't feel myself here. But maybe because she's now considering, a lot of things, pity on this man because of how much he has invested in this relationship and how many years she has kept him waiting. Because of that consideration, out of pity, she decided to marry. But she's not in love. Oh boy, if you are such a person and you discover that this person doesn't really love you, she's just pitying you, I encourage you to release her. I proposed to someone for marriage, before I got married to my wife. I proposed to someone, and I saw myself saying something to her on the day of proposal. When I finished, I told her to go and prayerfully think about it. Don't be in a hurry to answer me. When I wanted to go, I told her something. I said, please, one favor you will do me. Because by God's grace, I felt I was respected. And I didn't want to mistake respect to love. So I told her, one favor you will do me is to make sure you are bold enough to tell me no if you are not persuaded that I'm for you. That I came is just basically based on my strong feeling and thinking. I may be wrong. So please go and prayerfully think about it. If you are not persuaded to say yes, be bold to tell me no. I will appreciate it. You know the story? She later told me no. After 3 months of praying, she came back and said she was done. And she said she's not persuaded that we are going to be together. That was not easy for me to swallow. It was a bitter pill for me. And then I tried to manage my emotions and myself that day. So many questions in my head. I told her I have a lot of questions in my head, but I decide not to ask them so I won't make mistake, lest it's used against me in the court of law. And then, excuse me. And then I left her and appreciated her for giving audience to me. About 3 months down the line, I called back and said, can you reconsider my proposal? And she still said no after like 2 weeks. I think about 6 months later again, I also called and said, look, I'm still feeling that we could do this thing. She said she's not persuaded. And sincerely, that was the last time I prayed for her. I appreciated her so much for being bold to say that. And today, two of us can look back and feel strongly we never made mistake in that decision. Okay, and for such young ladies who are bold to say no, before someone they respect and all the people around their peers respect, I admire such people. I give them thumbs up. So be bold to say no if you are persuaded that person is not for you. You don't enter into this kind of relationship based on sympathy. Pity is a shadow of love that should not be allowed to drive a relationship or marriage. You know why? Pity has expiring dates. When someone discovers, once that expiring date reaches, that pity will go. And then it will become obvious that that thing is shadow. And then when someone discovers that she's only or he's only an object of pity, the person in most cases will naturally want to break forth to fight out of that pity. And if care is not taken, sometimes that fight could become violent. It could come in a very violent manner from towards the donor of the pity. You are the one donating the pity. The recipient can fight to overcome that pity. And sometimes you see people crashing in relationship. Pity is an instrument of relationship that steals away confidence of the recipient. It steals away the self-worth of the recipient. Okay? Some relationship should not be allowed to go beyond the realm of help and friendship. There was another person I proposed to because I had a very strong feeling towards her. Sorry, I was telling my wife yesterday when we were considering this that I think God allowed me to pass through this experience, so I'll become an instrument to help so many young persons. That I told her if I had prayed once and got the direction and I married with one touch, maybe I would have been among those saying that if you propose to one person and you are not there, then you are not working with God. No. I think He allowed me to have that experience so I can have a message for persons like you. And so I proposed to her, and then she told me that, no, she started behaving somehow. I felt she was not comfortable with my proposal. Maybe she felt I was coming based on pity. Maybe she's right anyway. But she gave me a behavior I read quickly. Some young men don't know how to read body language of ladies. There are people you want to talk with or talk to and they give you body language. You should read that and respect yourself, so you don't start unnecessary fights. I told my counselor, I think there is something wrong here. This person seemed not to be comfortable with my proposal. And that is also making me lose the excitement and joy with which I approached it. What do I do? He says, swallow your pride, go and withdraw your proposal. And that was what I did. I called, I said, can we have a chat? And then to cut the story short, I told her maybe permit me to withdraw this proposal because I feel we are not meant to be together. And suddenly she was happy and I saw a relief in her. And sincerely, we became the best of friends after we discovered that we are not meant to marry. You can have a very good friend, but that relationship is not compulsory that it must end in marriage. I have another case. This is a young lady in the university. She was sexually abused and it affected her psychologically. She wanted to leave the university. Somehow, a young man who knew about it reported the case to my wife, and two of us teach in the same university. So reported the case to my wife, and then my wife called my attention and said, there is a case we need to intervene in. We need to help this young lady. And then in the course of discussing with her and all of that, she was rescued from that situation. It was a very bad case that got to the management of the university. It was a bad case. Okay? But somehow she was rescued and she became stable. She became stable and got out of that relationship. And successfully she graduated. After their graduation, of course, the young man was following up and was being a very good friend to support her through the trying period. But after their graduation, the young man proposed to her for marriage. And she wasn't comfortable with that proposal. She felt it was built on pity. And so she suggested to him that they needed to come and see us, myself and my wife. So they came. On a closer chat and personal chat with her, I discovered that she felt strongly that that proposal was born out of pity. And that if she enters into that relationship, she wouldn't be herself. She begged us to help her explain to the young man that even though she admires him and appreciates all the role he played during her trying period, she doesn't want to enter into marriage with him. I loved her sincerity. I saluted her courage. And so we had to engage the young man in a discussion. And he saw with us why he needed to withdraw from that proposal. And then they became best of friends again. Okay, so pity is not love. That's the point I'm making. If you marry out of pity, you will end up pitying yourself. I will tell you again. If you marry out of pity, at the end of the day, you will not just be pitying the person, you will end up pitying yourself. So relationship or marriage you accept out of pity will be difficult to be sustained in the long run. Can we enter the big question now? I know you've been waiting for this one. And what's the big question? What is love? Well, love is quite difficult to define. I need to acknowledge that at this point. It's difficult to define. But if you check dictionary, some common definitions you see about love is the fact that it's a warm or kind feeling. It's also described as affectionate or tender devotion. In other places, it was defined as warm or kind feeling between two persons. In another case, you see definition like sexual passion of desire, or sexual passion or desire. Another definition says delightful or lovable person or thing. Of course, these are wonderful definitions of love, but they are limited. We can't limit love to human beings alone. Of course, people love animals, people love things, people love places, people even love experience. Someone had experience somewhere and they will love that experience. Theologians have tried to identify three types of love. One is agape love, the other one is philo, the other one is eros. Now, agape basically is divine type of love. Irrespective of who you are, the fact that God loves you. Those of us who believe in scripture knows that John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life." All right? So this type of love has clear goal. God demonstrated that love to rescue man from sin. By the way, if you have not been rescued, I encourage you to pray to him. He is saving a lot of people from their sin and turning them to righteousness. And you can be one of them. I'm a living testimony. God has helped my life and is still helping. Number 2 is to deliver man from evil and also to deliver man from eternal condemnation. The second type of love identified by theologians is the one they call philo. This is basically based on brotherhood of different types. Brotherhood that can be biological, brotherhood that can be based on religion, brotherhood that can be based on ethnicity, even brotherhood based on profession. Some of us know what is common. In many African countries, you see a policeman driving. Once he sees his fellow policeman and he identifies himself, they respect themselves. That person may not come under any search because he believes that he's a policeman. There is that love for one another that they can fight, that fraternity, that brotherhood. Okay? And then the third one is eros. This one is basically, based on the power of emotion or sexual desire. It lasts only to the extent that that sexual urge is sustained and satisfied. But it vanishes once there is a better substitute or there is deprivation. You deprive the person that satisfaction. Once that privilege is denied, that love vanishes. Once that satisfaction is not sustained, that love vanishes. So the last two I mentioned are quite limited ways of explaining love among human beings. Because the other one we are made to understand, agape, is God's love towards man. And the other two is like love among human beings. But they are actually limited ways of explaining what real love among human beings is. This is because they are conditional. But true love is not selfish. True love is not selfish. True love gives without grumbling and complaining. True love is willingly sacrificial, and even cheerful while being sacrificial. Why I agree totally that it is difficult to define true love. Permit me to give you these few descriptions. Number 1 is the fact that love is the unseen force which unites two parties together in harmony, in harmony with mutual joy. Is that unseen force. Those of us in economics, by God's grace, I lecture economics in the university. Those of us in economics, there's something we call the unseen hand in the markets. From Adam Smith, the unseen hand, the law of demand and supply. When you talk about love, there is this unseen force which unites two parties in harmony, in mutual joy. Okay? And so love is mysterious expression or experience. Love is that positive and powerful thought or feeling for another person or thing. It must not be human being. It can be for another person. It can be for thing. The fourth point I want to make is the fact that love is the conscious or unconscious expression of God's nature towards other people or things. That's love. Whether the person knows it or not, the person is consciously or unconsciously expressing God's nature on other people or other things. And that is why people make bold to say that love is divine. When they find it difficult to explain what this love is, they will just tell you that love is divine. And I totally agree with them. In 1 John chapter 4 verse 16, the scripture says, and so you know, and so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. He said, and so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. So God himself is love. In verse 7 of that 1 John chapter 4, he said, dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. So true love comes from God. True love is godly. All right? And that is why you will hardly see people who are messing up getting it right in terms of true love. So when people express love towards one, someone or anything, what the person is actually doing, consciously or unconsciously, is expression of God's nature. Expression of God's nature, or the appreciation of God through those people or things they are seeing. Okay? Now, the point to support this, this point I made now, the fact that true love is expression of God, is the fact that nobody determines where he will be born. Nobody determines, whether he's going to be tall or short, whether he's going to be an European or an African, his color, his race. A typical example, we know the oceans and the rock. Where they are sited today, they didn't decide that. Yet when we see them, we admire them. Sometimes we even compose songs or poems in admiration of these objects. And that is what love is. So in conclusion, especially for unmarried people, this divine, love we are talking about, for the person, anybody that you are considering for relationship must be someone you are able to express this divine love for, and that love must include some of the points you have mentioned earlier. Admiration. If you must consider someone, give someone a positive consideration for marriage, there should be that expression of this divine love that comes naturally, and it must be mixed with admiration. It must have the component of respect, mutual respect. It must have that affection, mutual affection, and compatibility should be part of it. And then sexual attraction, if you must consider someone for marriage. Otherwise, you can actually love someone without sexual attraction, and you don't need to marry that person. But if you want to marry anyone, you need to be sure you also put in consideration sexual attraction, compatibility. But I can love someone without being compatible, without being attracted to the individual. Okay? So if it comes to marriage, you need to be sure that that divine love has a mix of these qualities. If you experience this kind of love towards an opposite sex, and the person also expresses the same towards you, and both of you have what we call perfect peace of mind over that relationship, you may need to prayerfully give that relationship a positive consideration for marriage. Of course, this advice is mainly for those who are mature enough to talk about marriage. Marriage is meant for men, not for boys. The scripture says that it is not good for the man to be alone. But friends, boys can be alone. So if you're a boy, receive grace to be alone. Single and happy. All right? If you're a lady too, and you are not married, receive grace to be alone, single and happy, until you enter into marriage, where you drive this love to the next level. So note that the love that operates in secret, that's my concluding point. The love that operates in secret or fear is not true love. It operates in secret, it operates in fear, it's not true love. Any love that is afraid of being discovered is not true love. Love is free. Love is peaceful. Love is confident. Love is considerate. Love is helpful. Love is forgiving. Love is understanding. Love is lasting. And that is the substance. That is not the shadow. That is love itself. As I wish you the very, very best in your relationship. Okay? And I pray God will help you not to get it wrong in any relationship you are entering into. On that note, I want to thank you very much for giving audience to this discussion. Drop your comments in the comment box. I will gladly respond to you. I want to say, that this discussion is largely drawn from a book, a very beautiful but small booklet, published by Scripture Union Nigeria. That book is titled Shadows of Love, written by S. Oke. All right, and I give him all the credit he deserves for writing such a wonderful book. I hope the book is still available. Otherwise, I will encourage that Scripture Union Nigeria need to reprint this book. A lot of people need to understand this concept of love. On that note, I want to say a very big thank you. And then can I say freely now that I love you with the love of God. May God bless you and prosper your life. I wish you the very, very best. Pleasant experience everywhere and all the time. Stay blessed. Happy cheers. And one more acknowledgement. I acknowledge my darling wife, the lady behind this message you are receiving. In her, I have found perfect love. Thank you and cheers.